The Nobel Prize in Literature in 2016 was awarded to the American singer-songwriter Bob Dylan for having created new poetic expressions within the great American song tradition. This is seen as quite a remarkable departure from the usual Nobel Prize in Literature, which has been given mostly for fiction, non-fiction, poetry, but within the realm of writing, usually not for people who have accompanied it with music or become famous as musicians. Dylan's response to being awarded the Nobel Prize this year has surprised some people, but I have to say for anyone who's followed his career, it really doesn't come as much of a surprise. He has not acknowledged the prize, he has not said whether he's accepting or rejecting it, he has just completely ignored it. And this is part of Dylan's general hostile relationship since his very early days, since 1963 onwards, to people who would want to pigeonhole him or box him into what he considered a restrictive space. And the Nobel Prize, everyone who is a fan of Dylan's poetry is happy that he's got it. The Nobel Committee, at least some members, are happy that he's got it. They say there was a lot of debate about that, but it's not clear that Dylan wants it or needs it. Dylan is of course much more famous, arguably more famous, at least in a certain part of the world than the Nobel Prize itself. And it's interesting to ask what he did in his career which led him to deserve this prize. Dylan opened his career at the age of 21 in 1962 by singing protest songs in the context of evolving American society of the time.
Damn you masters of war, here that build the big guns.
The concerns at that time were social injustice, war, slavery, the environment. Slavery was over, but racial injustice was still rampant, and there was still a civil rights movement going on for African Americans, and Dylan was right there in the middle of it. And he wrote songs which protested at first against big government and majorities oppressing people who were minority or fighting unjust wars outside, and the devastating consequences of these actions. And this earned Dylan a huge fan following. He sang these songs accompanied by himself on guitar and harmonica, and he had a characteristic nasal voice, well, still does, and he propagated these lyrics which were often very intense, very moving, very probing, and very attacking also, frankly, about the state of society at the time. 3 years after this, when Dylan had established a body of work that already could be considered a lifetime achievement and sung legendary songs like "The Times They Are A-Changing" and "A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall," warning people of what would happen if they didn't change the approach they were following, Dylan changed his own approach and embraced electric hard rock music and changed his style of songs to be more personal, more intense, and more about people than about society at large. He became an accomplished storyteller. He became a person who could manipulate words, phrases, and in such a poetic way that they would really stick in your mind. But he also alienated his fan following and almost destroyed his reputation as a folk singer by becoming a rock singer, at which he was very good. But the rock music continued to have a strong poetic idiom, and it still qualified very well for being a new poetic expression within the great American song tradition. Dylan then explored many different American song traditions, including that of biblical-inspired folk songs and country and western music, following which he then switched styles repeatedly, including one phase when he became an evangelical Christian and wrote gospel-inspired lyrics that were extremely intense and specific towards evangelical Christianity. At each stage, This upset his followers, but created a new fan base and created a new direction where he could express his creativity. By the mid-80s, he had settled down to a kind of steady production of very good quality poetry set to music in different idioms of music, and has been performing and songwriting, releasing records and performing since then until the present day, even as recently as this year when he has given 75 concerts. So, Dylan's composite legacy is a set of poetic lyrics that express a range of human emotions and situations, from anguish, from paranoia and fear, to warmth, love, kindness, to regret, repentance, to sin, and then back to again the warmth of social interaction and the kindness of people, and the sadness of some of his failed emotional relationships, and and reflections on where he had come after all this, and what he leaves us with are songs and lyrics that are so universal that they apply to people across different cultures in many different contexts. And when thinking about what was going on in Dylan's mind, which is currently a guessing game going on since the last couple of weeks, the following lyrics from a 1981 song of Dylan came up, and they give a very good insight into how he might address this kind of situation. So, I will read these lyrics out for you. Try to be pure at heart, they arrest you for robbery.
Mistake your shyness for aloofness, your silence for snobbery. Got the message this morning, the one that was sent to me, about the madness of becoming what one was never meant to be. Where's Uncle Georgia?
About the madness of becoming what one was never meant to be. And in some sense, this is a good thought to leave this discussion on, that Dylan is resisting the madness of becoming a Nobel laureate, which is something he feels he was never meant to be.
But if you got to go